Welcome to the PlaceTech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Unger, editor of PlaceTech. Today, I'm here with Tom Willcock, Director of Innovation at Hollis. How do you do, Tom?
Hey, Paul, how are you doing? You all right?
Very well, very well. Hollis is an international independent real estate consultant, and Tom and I last caught up in MIPIM in Cannes a few weeks ago, where Hollis had a great presence and hosted some fascinating debates. How was it for you, Tom?
I thought it was fantastic. It was my first MIPIM that I've been to. I'm not from a real estate background, and my first time going to MIPIM was supposed to be down in early 2020, and of course that didn't happen because of COVID. And so, but yeah, really, really interesting. I thought it was really, really good. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, I thought it was so exhilarating, really, to have everybody back together. Everybody's networking with people from all over the world, and there's a sort of compound effect. There's like a hive effect of the energy of everybody else's networking as well, and getting everyone together was just brilliant, and you re-energize the business, your ideas, your role, and it really sort of propels you into the rest of the year. So I love it, and it was great to be back.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really, really enjoyed it.
So one of the things people were asking there, and they're always asking, is what's the big trends right now? Prop tech, property technology has come a long way in the last few years. And I thought it would be fun to have a quick fire walk through some of the mega trends in property technology today, if you're up for that, Tom.
Yeah, really, really happy to do that, Paul. I'm sure that we have a quite interesting discussion. I think the challenge is going to be how do you actually keep it with it time bound, etc. Because this sort of thing the two of us get going, we could go on for hours.
Absolutely, maybe we'll do a series on it. So let's dive in, and we'll unpack some of the mega trends in property technology you should know about, and ones that you can start doing something about today in your business. So Tom, let's dive in. What's your first megatrend?
My first megatrend that I've seen really is, I'm just going to call it visualization. So the use of visualization and contextualization in real estate to help make better and more cost-effective decisions. And I'm seeing this happening on a number of fronts. Firstly, it is, from the use of 360 tours, where there's been Matterport, and people have been doing that on the residential side for some time, but seeing increasing use of that sort of technology in deal flows, which is really, really interesting. We've got a product out there that has done something. It's been really, really good for us, actually, in terms of, portfolio sales of buildings and things like that. But also that then starts going into gaming engines as well. And one of the things that struck me at MIPIM was, there's quite a few people there starting to use gaming engines as well for visualization. I'm not a surveyor, and I've been in banking for the last 20 years. And when I joined Hollis in 2019, one of the first things I said was, well, why are we sending so many people out to site? And I started working on a really high resolution 360-degree tour product for it. And so when COVID hit, we were very, very fortunate that we had a scalable solution, and which enabled potential purchasers of buildings, to be able to go around their building, understand the building, or look at something that they're interested in buying, and to be able to make a decision on that. So we've numerous use cases of people from the Far East buying buildings in London over COVID. Banks in Germany releasing funds to developments down in Spain without having to visit. So completely reworking the workflows on that. It's really fascinating. And it also, not only does it save costs, but then can start to be used in the remainder of the deal flow of it as well. So, if there's an issue, well, what is the size of the issue? Not only can the potential purchasers look at it, but then also, the insurance providers, the underwriters, can have a look at it. So rather than say something getting stuck for 2 or 3 weeks, potentially at the end of it around insurance, well, everyone just jumps on a call straight away. You can see this is the issue, this is the size of the issue, can we insure it, etc. Okay, what's the impact? let's crack on. And so that's one thing, and that's a relatively simple thing that I've just talked about there.
Yeah.
But I think it's revolutionized real estate just over the last couple of years.
And something that would have been seen as quite futuristic, to have virtual tours, and people would have thought, well, I've got to go and see the bricks and mortar and touch it and taste it. It seems to, from what you were saying, all the use cases there, it's been welcomed with open arms and accepted now.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, it has. I mean, of course, it's been done through necessity, hasn't it? It's been done through the necessity over COVID, but it's one of the things that we've all seen. I mean, the world generally has changed so much because of COVID and the workflows. I mean, more change happened in GPs, in the NHS within 2 months than that happened in the previous 20 years. In terms of use of video calling, we've all had to adapt, and of course, that's sort of one end of the pendulum. But I think, is the pendulum going to go back to where it was in terms of everyone having to go to site all the time? No, I don't think so. I think, this sort of side of thing and visualization and contextualization of data is really here to stay.
Okay. And your second one is something not too far removed from visualization?
Yeah, I think so. So BIM, my second. So I think we're finally going to start seeing an increased usage of BIM. And
So for those that maybe don't know, just explain what BIM is.
Oh, so building information management. So the use of Revit models, and so you actually build a model of a building, and then you start putting the specs associated with that building in there. And it's something which has been required on certain government work for some time, but there hasn't been a massive usage or uptake of BIM. And I can start to see that we are going to see an increased usage of BIM. And this is coming from, this is kind of like a pincer movement associated with this. On one side of things is going to be regulation. So post-Grenfell, one of the things coming out of that is the golden key set of data. And the new laws are then coming in around that. We don't yet know the details about that, but BIM is the ideal place to be storing that data and that sort of data from a golden key set of data. You've then got some really, really interesting technologies starting to come off the back of that. So there's a UK company, I think it's called BuildDot. I think it's that, and it's they take a BIM model, and then using 360 technology are then mapping into how far complete is a particular project. So you say you've got a grill on your BIM model. Has that grill actually been installed? This is quite game changing, right? In terms of, what are you starting to see people re-engineering their entire workflows? So instead of BIM before being seen as, oh well, maybe I'll do, maybe I won't, sort of thing. Now there's some real benefits to it, and you're going to start. So there's two sides to those benefits. Then, as I said, the regulatory side, but also then the technology side of it as well.
So is this what we're talking about here? Is this the same as a digital twin?
Yeah, good question. So I think lots of people have got different ideas about what a digital twin is. So in my understanding of it, how I would class a digital twin is that you're then starting to stream in IoT data into a representation of that building to be able to understand what is going on.
So you're getting into performance and live real-time sort of data to understand what's going on in the building.
Exactly that. I mean, every 10 years, we go through a fundamental shift as a society, and that's caused by changes in speed of data networks. It happens every 10, 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G. 5G, one of the things that everyone talks about with 5G is the change in speed from it. Well, yes, it's going to, and it's going to be very fast. Another change is going to be latency. So suddenly the use cases, operating at its fastest, the use cases come down to sub 10 milliseconds, which is as fast as your brain perceives reality. So the whole use cases around augmented reality and things like that start to come to the fore. The other side of that is number of devices that can be put in per node. So you can have up to 1 million devices per node put in, which is where IoT sensors start to come in from that. So we've already got clients who are starting to move away from SFG 20 maintenance requirements on their kit and starting to put in preventative maintenance monitoring from IoT sensors. So the business case being on this that is still avoids breakdown maintenance, because that's what SFG20 is supposed to do, but then also reduces the maintenance costs associated with that, because if the kit is in very, very good working order, that's you then don't need to maintain it as much. But there's so many use cases then for IoT sensors. So, I mean, all the normal ones, like which rooms to clean. Has anyone been in that room? If they haven't been in that day, don't clean it. Which toilets need the soap refilling in it? You can get little sensors there around that. Also, what is the footfall? But all of this, for me, is when then starts coming to all of this sort of data is going to start coming back into the valuations of the buildings as well. So this, as part of the sale process, well, what data do you have associated with that building? How then can you start optimizing that building to make that building more valuable from it? I also think that another sensor I haven't really talked about yet is air quality sensor data is going to become a lot more important. Loads of research come out, COVID, etc., about air quality, but then also some stuff around in terms of your not mindfulness, but how intelligent you are as well. If you're surrounded by lots of really polluted air, your output becomes suboptimal from it, from your thinking. So so all of that sort of data streaming together in models, etc., with visualization is a really interesting space for me.
Yeah, it's powerful. I was going to ask you about air quality, and do you think we'll get to a point where it'll be public and anybody will be able to see what the air quality is inside a building when they're assessing whether to take space, etc.?
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that occurring. And you start comparing outdoor air quality to indoor air quality as well. I mean, this is part of some of the certifications that are out there. Some of these external organizations in terms of indoor and outdoor air quality. I can see that exactly being streamed in, and it will become a very important part of choosing a space. I believe so.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it affects the way that cities are governed as well, and things like congestion charging and the public policy that sits around the buildings as well, which we've seen in some cities where they're trying to bring in emissions charges and things like that as well, especially if you get into, like you say, the health benefits and the performance and productivity. Links to diseases and things we're much more aware of now because of COVID and the airborne and the lung capacity and some of these very serious implications. It's an interesting one on sensors. I think it's one of the 2 or 3 big areas of tech that we saw accelerate during the last couple of years, when suddenly overnight property companies could see the benefit of being able to monitor and manage buildings remotely and not having to send people out or have them on site when there's maybe a public health hazard to them.
Or just in terms of normal asset management. This whole thing, we started at the start of this talking about visualization, didn't we? Well, just actually understanding, where something is. Rather than being locked away in a 2D plan in somebody's drawer, what does this site actually look like? If you've got multiple sites, and something happens, it's I think that the benefits are multifold.
And how easy is it for somebody if I'm a property asset manager? I've been doing things the very manual way, sending people on site, checking for Legionnaires or whatever it is in the water. And how do I move from that world into a sensor managed IoT world? If I didn't train as a techie when I qualified as a surveyor, etc. What would be your advice to people?
Engage with people who know how to do it, to begin with, to learn it. My viewing of real estate is that as a market, generally a little bit behind in terms of technology adoption. Everyone still thinks that Excel is amazing. I've been in banking for the last 20 years, and the one thing you try and avoid is Excel if you possibly can. And so I actually think there's a whole amount of increasing technology adoption, but awareness, throughout real estate that actually needs to occur. You also need to make sure, though, that you're not that you're not putting in solutions which could then become very, very quickly redundant. Technology moves on at such a pace that you actually need to make sure that you're making wise investments around this, because it's very easy with technology to spend an awful lot of money, which then becomes utterly obsolete within about 5 years' time. So
Yeah.
actually, it needs to be some very, very careful choices around how to incrementalize your way into it.
And property is a very complex business as well. There's lots of different stakeholders. There's lots of consultants and companies involved at different parts of the building cycle. Does that pose challenges when you've got one consultant that maybe, or supplier that installs the sensors and the switches and the wiring, but then somebody else comes in later and they're the appointed property manager for it? And how do you navigate that?
It will do, won't it? But it all has to be thought out in terms of a carefully thought out long-term strategy. In terms of just going for something nice, bright and shiny because you think that's what you want to do, and spending a lot of money on it doesn't necessarily mean it is the right long-term decision. And it is all about having a long-term strategy. And you can see that within our client base. There are some of those clients who have definitely got a long-term strategy around it, and there are those that don't have a long-term strategy around it, but actually carefully thinking about. So I'm very much in my innovation efforts, I'm problem-led. I am not looking. So it's all very well. So I could spend an awful lot of money about doing lots of really, really blue sky things, but no, it has to be problem-led. And I would have thought that most boards of property firms should have data as one of their board agenda items. What are they doing? What is their strategy? What do they want to achieve? And then thinking long term about it, rather than, oh, this is nice, bright and shiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we haven't really touched on that. That all these things are going to throw off lots of data that has to be organised and structured and presented in a meaningful way. Otherwise, what's it all for?
Yeah, what's the point? All you're doing is paying for space, But actually, how do you actually structure? What's your core database design for doing that? Again, what problems are you trying to solve? From that, because that then streamlines it down.
Okay, so on to we're doing well. On to the fourth one. What's your next trend, Tom?
Drones. So I'm a drone pilot. I was originally brought into Hollis around building a drone team, and we use drones every single day of the year, or barring weekends. But building inspection, mapping, 3D modeling, using photogrammetry. We use that now. Really, really beneficial to us. A lot of people start making a comparison between a cherry picker and a drone. And cherry picker, very good, but you're getting a point view of something. Is a drone ever going to be able to beat, though, a cherry picker, somebody from a surveyor sticking their hand in a gutter? And actually, no, it can't do that bit. But you are seeing the entirety of a roof. So if we're doing a 500,000 square foot warehouse roof, we're flying the entire thing. We aren't looking at it from the outside going around. So we're able to capture all of the data associated with that roof. So thousands of photos, and then present. This is right back to the beginning of what we're talking about. Present all of that data in context. So where are the issues associated with it? And you can start to see with cherry pickers potentially. If it's a really difficult part of the roof to go and see, well, that's going to be where the problems are on the roof, because people won't. If you can't get there with a cherry picker to view it, I bet people haven't done the maintenance on the roof, in that part of it. So we use that now an awful lot for remote sensing, getting into thermal modeling as well. From that, so using radiometric thermal drones as well. So for looking at PV deterioration, so photovoltaic deterioration, but also for U value monitoring in terms of thermal leakage from a building. You can see with the green agenda and net zero, it's all very well saying that you have an EPC A rated building. Well, prove it. In terms of have you got heat leakage coming out? What actually is really occurring on that building? So that's where we are now. it becomes really, the whole drone thing has become really exciting though. So drone operations largely in the UK now are limited to what's called visual line of sight operations. So maximum 500 meters away from you and 120 meters up in the air. We're on the cusp of something called beyond visual line of sight operations. And so COVID has allowed some trials to occur, around medical side of things. So COVID samples being flown around in Essex, I believe, where the pilots are located in Leicester. Potentially starting a drug trial, which as well for distribution of drugs from Portsmouth Hospital to the Isle of Wight. So it can take 2 or 3 hours by car to get drugs across on the ferry, the vagaries of the ferry. It's a 12-minute flight. With a beyond visual line of sight drone with the pilots located in Leicester. And, several solutions now potentially coming out, say, drone and box solutions, where you have a drone permanently located at a particular site, which is then able to carry out operations from that site, but with the pilots not there. This is game changing in terms of inspection. So repeat inspection, gathering data sets for the deterioration of assets over time, what is going on, or say for security, something's happening on that site. What is happening on that site for insurance side of things? There's some really interesting. Then, if that isn't exciting enough, then you start getting to what I'll just call, say, drone 2.0. What about if drones can start interacting with buildings? There's already, a number of years ago, I think it was one of the universities down the south coast did a research topic around, using drones to change light bulbs on streetlights. I'm not sure what the results were, but you get the idea. What happens if drones can then start doing maintenance on buildings? Why do you need to send people onto roofs, etc.? So the whole space is really exciting.
And the whole sort of urban mobility and the future of travel, whether it's deliveries for retailers and catering, or it's passenger taxis, flying taxis being trialed now. And later this month, you've got the very exciting urban airport in Coventry that's opening. Yep. And they're planning 200 sites like that around the world. So it's something that you're starting to see now that architects and planners, designers are thinking about and putting into proposals for future sort of urban schemes. So lots and lots of potential there. And what does it look like cost wise compared to the sort of old way of doing things when it comes to drones?
Are you talking about inspection drones?
Yeah, like go back to that use case with the roof. What is that cheap? Is it expensive?
Obviously, it depends on the size of the roof, but it's not significantly more. It's more expensive than a cherry picker, but you're gathering way much more data from it, and and it then becomes repeatable. So it's £1,000-2,000 sort of thing.
And if you're spotting things that couldn't be spotted before, then what's the cost of not doing it?
We had a case where one photo enabled a client to get an entire new roof. That was one photo, saved the client. I think it was about £700,000.
Yeah, which is pretty compelling. And the last one is a very interesting one that I think definitely is one of the top 2 or 3 that keeps coming up, that you can weave across all of these that we've looked at, the trends so far today, when you talk about forecasting and predicting into the future. What's the 5th and final one, Tom?
Artificial intelligence. It's just going to be game changing for surveying. In so many ways. So I was thinking back at this, obviously prepping, for today. And you could probably say, even though I'm not a surveyor, you could probably say that the whole surveying process hasn't changed that much in the last 100 years. Go to site, analyze the data that you've got, provide the advice to the client. That is the surveying value chain, as it were. And AI sort of heralds the opportunity to make the process so much more efficient. So, just in the small things that we've been doing and testing around this. So we've been testing triaging drone acquired imagery for roofing defects. So I was using some off the shelf AI software, and I quite quickly built an AI classifier that was able to differentiate between cut edge corrosion and dirt. It's one of the things. So is that cut edge corrosion? Is it early stage cut edge corrosion on the roof, or is that dirt? And the initial results appear promising. So that's just in a very, very limited side of things. But if you think about the ability then to provide, to say, do a first round of QA over a survey report, the ability to provide consistent training to surveyors, the ability then to checking the consistency of advice given to clients. This is all really, really interesting fields of development, for AI. I'm not saying that, we don't need surveyors. Of course we need surveyors, and we're always going to have a human in the loop. I mean, computers are really, really good at doing certain things, when they're in normal bounds. It's when things go outside of that humans are really, really good at spotting that. Just saying that the whole surveying process can be made so much more efficient through the use of this technology. And then we haven't even started talking about putting AI onto the data sets associated with IoT sensors around gaining insights about it. The whole, that's interesting that, we haven't actually discovered that before. I mean, Google have had some, spectacular results in terms of the structure of certain, I was going to say biology there, but in terms of certain molecules that has been solved through AI grunt work as opposed to human minds doing it. So that I think the whole field is just fascinating. And at this stage, I mean, we're just at the start of it, aren't we? I think in terms of, we can't even envisage some of the use cases that are actually going to come down the line on this.
There was a phase a couple of years ago where it was very much a sort of marketing gimmick, if you ask me, that a lot of tech companies started putting AI at the end of their name.
Still is though, right?
Yeah, and they're not really doing artificial intelligence. I mean, how can people tell when it is AI and when it's just marketing?
Great question. Ask questions is my advice. We're talking about artificial intelligence, but as soon as anyone presents to me and says that we do AI on this, I go, really? Yeah, talk to me about it. What do you do? And you're right. Quite often, you find that it isn't really AI, and there's an awful lot of human intervention in it, and there's parts of the processes that have been roboticized, for want of a better word, in it. Irrespective of that, though, I still think, the field itself is fascinating, and is going to fundamentally change, the whole real estate sector.
Yeah,
out of all of these 5 trends, the biggest one is definitely the last, artificial intelligence, because the scope is so enormous.
Yeah, the companies that are really doing it are, he says, as a non-scientist, like I know what AI is, but from what I can tell, the ones that have really demonstrated how profound it is are you're talking about a sort of paradigm shift in property, because it's property, the sums of money involved, the risk involved means that it is by its nature very backward looking, that people copy each other. They look at what's worked and what's sold in the past and what stayed up and all this sort of thing. So it's very much a business that looks in the rearview mirror. And AI presents the ability to say, we've taken all of the examples that have existed in the past, and we're now predicting that this will happen, whether it's the time that a boiler will break down or the best design for that site that's likely to get planning and maximize the value of it. It's when it turns it and it looks out of the front windscreen at the road ahead, that is potentially a very big game changer for property.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is. I do think it is. But as I said, I think it's going to be also pretty much, it could be all pervasive, couldn't it, across real estate, and we have no idea where this is going, where it's going to go. I talked about, a few minutes ago, I talked about the move from 4G to 5G. Well, 6G is only 8 years away. In terms of that life cycle, what on earth is that going to bring? We've got it's a very, very fast moving world, and we operate, as you said, in this industry that is because the risks involved is quite backward looking. And so it's just a fascinating, really, really fascinating mixing pot, to be in real estate at this point in time. And yeah, love it, completely love it.
Yeah, and there's obviously immersing yourself in podcasts like this and reading things like PlaceTech and other publications, going to conferences like MIPIM and sitting at some of the sort of techie panels and things. But what else can people working in property companies, what can they do today or tomorrow that is going to start making a difference? And maybe they don't feel confident around AI and some of these big concepts. That what can they do to start their journey towards a more sort of modernized, digital, transformed future?
Get curious about it. Start reading about it. I mean, I read a variety of publications on a weekly basis to find out, and try and put two and two together. So I read Wired magazine a lot. I read The Economist every week. There's some fantastic newsletters like TLDR that come out on a daily basis. They're just talking about technology and what's going on. I subscribe to drone side of things, etc. So just get curious about it would be my number one side of things. I mean, there's some great books as well that I've read recently. One which is associated with the IoT or will apply to IoT as well is called "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends" by I think it's Nicole Perlforth, won the FT McKinsey Book of the Year.
Oh yeah.
And it's that's all about cyber. So when I was in banking, which I was before coming to real estate, I mean, obviously a massive focus on cyber, and we're starting to see some of those moves now in real estate firms, etc. In terms of, particularly the Ukraine crisis, but actually understanding the risk associated, particularly on the IoT side of things around streaming data, because what would happen if you can start manipulating that data? We've talked about the linkages to valuations, but if you get that wrong, think about the implications as if your building data was hacked. What would that then mean for you, and how do you ensure that you are secure as an organization? Really, really important topics, and really, really worthwhile reading around that. And I'd highly recommend that book. This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends, in terms of just for getting a really good general background as about cyber risk.
Wonderful. Love a good book recommendation. So it's a nice one to finish on, and maybe cyber will be on the next list next time we meet.
Looking forward to it.
That's wonderful. Thanks. Really, really enjoyed that. Brilliant discussion. Hope you've taken something away for your businesses and your roles from that discussion. Thanks to Tom Willcock from Hollis. I've been Paul Unger, editor of PlaceTech. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Subscribe to our weekly news roundup for free at placetech.net/subscribe.